Hello everybody, you are watching Sue's Stuff. Thank you so much for stopping on by, as today we're gonna talk about this guy from Sideshow Collectibles, their Cyclops premium format figure, 2020 edition. Come along, let's dive in. Thanks for stopping on by for another review. Now, let's get right into it, starting with the price. This figure retails for $580 US. In my case, factor in taxes and shipping fees, the total bumps up to just under $659 US. This review is not sponsored by Sideshow Collectibles, as I paid for this figure with my own money, so this is a completely independent review. Moving on, there is no exclusive or limited SKUs, as this is the only version there is, and I actually quite like that because you don't have to worry about FOMO or fear of missing out if you don't pre-order too soon. You can see in-hand photos or reviews and make an informed decision without missing out on anything. Also, everyone that orders gets everything that's included, so no one's left out. It's just good for consumers in my humble opinion. There are 9 total pieces that come with this figure, though it only takes 6 of them to fully assemble Cyclops. As the other 3 are alternate display options, this figure's feature set includes 2 portrait sculpts and 3 interchangeable visors on top of those portraits, giving us a total of 6 different possible facial displays. As stated earlier, since there is no exclusive version of this figure, these editions are available for all that purchase this figure. Lastly, the visors do not light up, as there is no light up feature on this figure. Quick disclaimer, if you watched the unboxing I did for this figure, you'll have seen that the optic blast visor I had was a little bent. Here's an update to that, as I was able to easily correct it. I just took the tip of where the bend was and I held it about 8 inches away from a blow dryer for about 3 to 5 seconds. It straightened itself out all by itself with no fiddling. Continuing on, Sideshow Collectibles set a production run for this figure at 1,250 pieces worldwide, which is actually a lot lower than what they've been doing these past few years. Sideshow's edition sizes have easily been 3 to 4 times this number when factoring in both their exclusive and collector's versions. So this lower production run has come quite as a surprise to me. Cyclops has always been, to me at least, one of the main Xmen characters. If we look at the production run of Sideshow's other recent Xmen character, Gambit has a total production run of 6,000 units, while Rogue has 3,000 units. Jean Grey is also 3,000. Even Emma Frost was 1,800. So am I wrong in thinking that Cyclops is as popular as he is? Does 1,250 edition size for Cyclops seem low to you, or does it seem right to you? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. So if you don't know, Sideshow Collectibles has tiers of figures in their product stack. This Cyclops figure falls into their premium format product stack, which typically means that this figure is scaled at 1/4 or 1/4 of an idealized human male. I measured Cyclops and he did differ a bit compared to the dimensions listed on Sideshow's site. Cyclops' height measures in at 17 inches, his depth is 14.5 inches, and his width is 11 inches. In metric, that's 43.18 centimeters for height, 36.83 centimeters for depth, and 27.94 centimeters for width. Where it differs from what is listed on the site is that Cyclops' optic blast visor actually adds an additional 2 inches or 5.08 centimeters of overall depth. Cyclops' total weight is 11 pounds or 4.99 kilograms. I weighed all the different options between heads and visors, and they came out to be roughly the same, give or take a few grams. Now let's move on to the qualities of the figure, starting with the paint. I really, and I mean really, like the paint on this figure. Defects or imperfections aside, the paint is truly impressive, as it almost gives me the vibe that this is an original prototype. The flatness of the blue has a very dramatic contrast when compared to the shiny yellow parts of his uniform. The blue, even though it is flat and finished, has depth from a darker shaded in blue. These dark blues are subtle, but are are complemented by his physique and individual muscle groups. So when you look at his deltoids, his pecs, or his abs, for example, it looks like real natural shadows, regardless of the light in the environment in which he is displayed in. The base is also another area I can commend the paint for, as the red hot parts almost look like they're glowing. The rocky bits look believably like rock. You'd think it'd be easy to sculpt and paint things to look like rock, but somehow many figures I've purchased in the past haven't been able to replicate it as well as here. Take note of the areas where snow and dirt is mixed together. It is done exceptionally well, and I hope I'm doing it justice on screen here. I do have discrepancies against the paint, however. There is some dirt and grime painted on some yellow parts, but omitted from other parts strangely. For example, his boots and gloves you'd rightfully assume to have weathering, dirt, and grime. It's done beautifully as well. But what is a little strange is how his pouches on his belt have dirt or grime, and just below that, where his underwear tights are, they're completely clean. Now, maybe Cyclops never sits down, but it's a stark contrast going from dirty to clean when they're just adjacent areas. Another area in the paint I found strange were his interchangeable visors. So the visors are painted glossy, well, they have a glossy finish all over, but the ear caps over his head are flat. With the visors on, there is a transition from glossy to flat that I find odd. I do wish that they had made the whole visor flat in finish and only glossed the red ruby-colored eyelet area. Many probably won't care about this matter, but it is something that I thought I should point out. Big credits go to Bernardo Esquivel and Casey Love, the two designers on the paint team for this figure. Next, on to textures. I'm really glad they decided to not give Cyclops' blue suit a textured pattern. It's been happening a lot with figures recently, and though in some contexts it's very cool, let's be honest. But this figure shows that you don't always have to go that route to make a figure look cool. So we can admire how beautifully sculpted his physique is here. There are some small additions they did make to his suit though, mainly being his suit's seam lines, which some wrap around his deltoids and run down his abs. It's not too overly done to where it detracts from his physique, but actually in some areas accentuate them, such as his deltoids. Other added textures to this figure, he has ribbing on his knee pads and elbows, which give a sense of where the suit stretches and bends. His boots also have a texture pattern on the lower parts. Even his gloves has stitching and padding around the knuckle areas. His hair has some fine detailed lines too. I grew up with the Jim Lee Cyclops, and that is the Cyclops that resonates with me the most. So I'm really happy that they kept this as close to that and only minimally adding Sideshow's own personal touches. The overall sculpt is truly beautiful. In the stock photos on Sideshow's site, it looked like he was lurched over, which I wasn't too fond of. In person, he's not so lurched over. More so, he gives the sense that he is braced and postured for his optic blast. A 3/4 view or 3/4 view from his right side is the most optimal view for this pose, though my personal favorite view of him is a side profile, as it reminds me of the Marvel vs. Capcom fighting games and even some of the comic book artwork. His screaming portrait is sensational, and ironically in the stock photos I wasn't too keen on this portrait, but in person it looks amazing. You can see all his teeth in his mouth back to his molars. This portrait is so empowering to the pose and even further emphasized when paired with the blast visors. The closed-mouth stoic portrait is fine, there's nothing wrong with it, though I do get a slight Arnold vibe from it. It's just the screaming portrait steals the show in my opinion. I particularly love the red X logos on his belt and suspenders. They're very deep in sculpt and give a lot of depth for such small, tiny areas. The thickness of the suspenders and how the head keys in was so well done that there's no visible seam or gap where the head inserts. There are some crumples in his suit, notably his elbow joints as well as behind his knees, where we'd expect, but also behind his left thigh near his hamstrings. There's this nice suit stretch. I thought that was a nice little detail. There are some veins added to his right bicep and his left arm too, which is more attention to detail. Credit goes to Mark Newman, the sculptor of this figure. So what do I not like about this figure? Well, it's a personal thing, but the figure doesn't light up. And I know, light ups are always going to be a personal taste. Some people love it, some people hate it. but I feel like it would have been easy to do on a figure like this. But this is also the child in me who had the original Toy Biz Cyclops with the LED eye that's also talking here. Next, I don't like how his hand isn't on his visor to open for an optic blast. Though I can see that it may be that he's already opened the visor and is in mid-blast, it's just having to remind myself that it isn't the most natural thing to do when you initially look at him. I also don't like that his hands are detachable. I understand why they did it, as upon inspecting how he was packaged, his right hand detached was actually able to shave down a few inches on the shipping box. I just personally like figures that are more complete and whole, as it lends a more completely sculpted feel. That's just a personal thing. I like the fully environmental base, but it doesn't gel or match well with the other characters in Sideshow Collectibles' more recent X-Men lineup, as those figures, they either have a Sentinel themed base or a Danger Room themed base. Now on to the things that I do like. I love that the base isn't overly large and is narrow. Its narrow footprint makes this figure easy to move around and will make it easy to group other figures closer in a team setup. Though I'll most likely stick to the Screaming Head portrait and Optic Blast, the extra mix and match optional displays are a nice addition. The paint on the one I received, at least, is so good it almost feels like an original prototype, aside from the defects, of course. I'm very happy they kept the art style close to Jim Lee's Cyclops, as Jim Lee is my favorite artist and it feels like they almost made this one for me. The pose I didn't like in the pictures, but in person it's so powerful that I wouldn't want him any other way now, even without the hand on the Optic Blast that I mentioned earlier. There are a few more things, if they were implemented, I would have loved this figure even more, such as another portrait or head sculpt that included the closed hair or non-hair portrait a la the OG X-Men Cyclops. That would have been cool. Also, an optional leather jacket would have been cool too. But for $580 US, it's hard to argue for more with what we're paying. In conclusion, Cyclops is not one of my favorite characters, but I do believe he is one of the most important X-Men. So building an X-Men team or collection would not be complete without him, right? Fortunately, Sideshow did the character justice this time around. There is another Cyclops figure that came out from another studio around the same time as Sideshow's, but the gold visor as well as a few other discrepancies I had with it. Also, Sideshow's version being much more affordable, I decided to go with Sideshow's this time around. And I'm very happy with my decision. Is he worth spending $580 US for? As usual, I will say that the value will depend on the person, but for 6 different display options, you're getting some variety here. Also, since there's no exclusive version, you can take a little bit of time to ponder about pulling the trigger without missing out on anything extra. Just make your decision soon, because a production run of $1250 isn't going to last forever. Either way, I hope that this video helped you out in your decision making. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed talking about and taking a deep dive into another collectible that is out there. So I said I wasn't a huge Cyclops fan, but that's only because I gotta stick with my boy Wolvie, you know? Anyways, it's such a great time to be an X-Men fan, right? There's a couple of great options for Cyclops and other X-Men characters. And if you told me when I was a little kid with the Toy Biz Cyclops with the LED light up eye that someday we'd be able to get a character like this represented in this form, I think my head probably would have exploded. Well, everybody, that's gonna be a wrap for this one. Thank you so much for stopping on by and just taking a look at this figure with me. I had so much fun filming this one, as he's just so photogenic from so many different angles. Sideshow did a really good job on this one. If you enjoyed the content, please consider hitting one of those out. It really helps me out. Also, leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think about this figure and if there's anything that I may have missed. And if this is your kind of content and you want to see more stuff like this from me, please consider hitting that subscribe button down below. And until next time, please keep collecting the things that you love, and I hope to see you in the next upload. Peace out, guys.